Divorce is hard enough on its own, but when your ex is a narcissist, it's a whole different game. We go into relationships looking for love, for connection, for trust. We commit, and when things go wrong, we try to fix them. And we bend, we compromise, we blame ourselves because that's what a good partner does, right? But what if the problem was never you? What if your ex was never capable of love in the way you thought? What if their version of love was just control? Add a kid to the equation and things get really messy. And by the time you see the truth, you're already in a lot of trouble and you're fighting for your kids, your sanity, your freedom. And the hardest part, nobody believes you. No one sees what happens behind the closed doors. So, how do you break free? How do you protect your kids? And after all of the damage, how do you trust again? Today, I'm speaking with Nisanka, who is a co parenting divorce coach. Am I saying that right?
Yeah,
How would you introduce yourself?
I help parents who co-parent with narcissistic partners or ex-partners. So the divorce might be a part of it, might not be a part of it. They might have gone through that process already. So
Hmm.
they're co-parenting though.
Co parenting with a narcissist.
Yeah.
So, my first question is, and I didn't know this when I was going through it, I had some inklings. How do I know I'm in a relationship with a narcissist, or how do I know that I'm co-parenting with a narcissist?
Oh, that's a really good question. And to answer that, I need to just decode the question a little bit because when the narcissistic abuse, the phrase abuse was originally introduced or coined by Professor Sam Buckney. He claims he's the one who coined it. He actually referred to people who have been abused by people with NPD, which is a full-blown narcissistic personality disorder, right? So at the time, that's what the phrase was used to. Now, widely, we recognize the phrase widely to describe an abusive situation with the cluster B personality or somebody with narcissistic traits. Okay? So how things manifest in these relationships is actually complicated. However, there are certain common patterns that comes up in every relationship, whether you're with a narcissistic person in the sense like somebody with narcissistic personality disorder or somebody with narcissistic personality trait, there are common abusive traits that you will see. Something like lack of empathy, um, that in terms of their behavior, lack of empathy, vindictiveness, rage, victimhood, entitlement. Those are common traits that you will see in them. But one of the best ways, and I'll take you through like a questionnaire, and that is one of the ways that you can sort of ask yourself, am I in a narcissistic relationship? So there are certain patterns. So ask these questions yourself. So, do they expect you to give without expectations of receiving from them? Do they want you to listen without being heard? Respect their boundaries while ignoring your own. They'll ignore yours, but they want you to respect their boundaries. Agree without questioning. So it's almost like godlike submission to them. Accept their distortions as facts. Support their belief that they are superior to you.
What's a distortion?
Distortion, so somebody with NPD lives in a fantasy. Reality is too much, too overwhelming for them because of the trauma that they've obviously endured, and therefore they create this godlike personality in their head, in their psyche, to to compensate the loss of self. So everything happens in a fantasy. So you and I have a reality which is, it's complex, and we tune into the nuances, but they don't have that ability. So everything is distorted. So, for example, they are the most important, they are the most talented, they are the richest or the most handsome, you know, person on this planet. It might not be true. It's a distorted fact. Factually, it's not true. It's a perception that they have. It could be about anything. You think about somebody like Trump. The things that he talks about are distorted facts. It's not grounded in reality. You know, it's not black and white. The world is not black and white. So yeah, so they would expect you to believe them as facts, because what will happen is, if you don't believe it as a human being, you'll question, you will challenge, you will get curious, you'll ask question. Now that's a reality that they can't cope with, and that's when the rage comes out,
Got it.
right? So another pattern is support their belief that they are superior to you, endure condensation, belittlement, rage without complaint, and cater to their needs while sacrificing your own, serve their privilege over yours, and take responsibility for how they are hurting you. So again, Professor Sam Buckney actually puts it really, really well. So a life with a narcissist is, it's like they will kill you, right? Metaphorically, they'll kill you, but they'll expect you to resurrect from your death and forgive them and serve them. That's just basically
That's brutal.
that is brutal. That's exactly how they regulate themselves. So there is no interior world. Somebody with NPD has no interior world. There's no identity for them. And reality is too much for them, too overwhelming for them. So that the way they operate is they mirror you, and in order to sustain their individuation process as a human being, as an individual, they need to kill your individuation, they need to kill your soul. That's the only way they can sustain theirs. That's where the abuse and the belittlement, um everything else. I almost said gaslighting, but people with NPD don't gaslight. They just live in a fantasy. We experience gaslighting because of that. Psychopathic people gaslight because they can hold a reality intact, but they can distort your reality. That's the difference between gaslighting and somebody living in a fantasy.
In terms of, and I don't mean to get too far off track here, but um, there's a rabbit hole here that I'm kind of interested in. In spirituality, there's this idea that you speak your reality into manifestation. It almost sounds like someone with NPD is doing that, but it's from a twisted place.
Yeah. I've not really looked into that to go into details or be curious about, but I'm curious now. But it sounds like it they actually, psychologically speaking, now I'm not a psychologist, by the way, I'm referring to other psychologists here who
Hmm.
have studied narcissistic personality disorder and narcissism. So psychologically speaking, you're right. What they do is recreating their trauma in their real life through their intimate partner. So in a way, what you talked about might be true. They have to recreate their trauma that is
Yeah.
unfinished, and then they have to recreate it in their life, but they have to see it through their partner, intimate partner. They can't experience it, it's too painful for them. They have to recreate it through their partner.
So okay, we're getting too off track here, but yeah, that's it. Narcissism is such a dark, twisted place. How how did you even get to the place where you wanted, where, well, maybe not wanted, that's the wrong word, but what led you to helping people through co-parenting with a narcissist?
It's a really long story. I had no understanding. So short and sweet story. I don't know how sweet it is, but I will tell you. Um, it's I was at one point. I've always been very academically driven and pretty good, and comes naturally. At one point, couldn't even string a sentence together. I couldn't understand anything. So I was gone. My cognitive functions, my ability to relate and have a bond with my child, anything was gone, and I was suicidal. And it was that point, it was like I just didn't know what was going on, but I knew something was not right. And I just had to leave this leave that relationship at that time to figure out what was going on with me. So I left, had the space, looked back, and I was in therapy at the time, but I was in sort of counseling, and counseling doesn't really work with um this level of trauma. And so anyway, I was figuring out, and I was doing research. I've always been into research, academic research, and that's kind of thing that I love. Anyway, as a way to cope, I delved into research, Google, you name it, YouTube. I was going through scenarios like, what's happening with me? Why am I feeling this way? So I was putting all these questions into Google, and I came across the word narcissistic personality disorder and narcissism, and Dr. Ramani's channel, like many of you might have done. And I started watching, and it started making sense. And I bought books after book after book after book after book, and then delved into so many channels to study this. And then just realize this goes way back to my childhood. I was that child trapped between, and one malignant narcissistic parent, and one I am 100% sure is NPD. I'm pretty sure my mom is NPD with narcissistic personality disorder. Like, she never saw me. They don't have this ability to see another human being as a human being. We're just an object in their fantasy. And I just started making sense. My life started making sense. Like, and then the grief struck. It's like, oh my God, what kind of a life have I been living? Because I don't know if any of you are aware of ACE, the Adverse Childhood Experience questionnaire. There are 10 questions. I scored 8 out of 10. My trauma history is that deep.
What are the questions like? Like,
It's
just
like, have
approximate.
you experienced or witnessed war or things, or have your parents belittled you, punished you, done have you experienced sexual abuse, and have you experienced in environments of war or violence, or there's like a whole lot of questionnaire over there, and I won't be able to remember on top of my hand. But I score 8 out of 10. And then I realized, and then started then putting patterns of my life into place. But on top of that, I was also in a very high conflict co-parenting situation. I'm like, why? Well, this is our child. Why are you doing this? This is our child. Why are you doing this to our own child? I was trying to make sense of that as well. Like, you can't hurt, you can't traumatize your child. I'm doubly traumatized as a mother, but also my inner child is also traumatized, right? Because I was that child. So I'm trying to now desperately protect myself and trying to make sense of it. Nobody's understanding it, and nobody's helping. I am now on my own with this situation, trying to deal with it. All I had was my grit, my determination, and the fact that I have to live a better life for my child, and the fact that I have actually been very academically sound. I put them all together, and I did it on my own. And I thought, well, that's a hell of a lot of experience. And I'm not the only person. And so many people I've come across have been through this. I thought, and I started talking to them about it. Like, you can do this, you can do that. It naturally evolved into this niche. Actually, never set out to do this. I had the holistic training, I had the life coaching training at the time, and I was like, I'm just going to combine it all together. And then I went and trained more on domestic violence and working with people with coercive abuse. So I've added more training to it. It's
Mhm.
just evolved from there.
I think you touched on, I don't think I realized what I was going through when I went through it. And you kind of touched on that. Like it's almost like you're drowning, but you don't know that you're drowning. You don't know that you're in the water.
No.
Um, and nobody's, I feel like the term narcissist gets thrown around a lot today. Um, but I don't know that it's necessarily used correctly. Um, Maybe people are conflating narcissistic traits with like NPD. And um, so how, if you're in it, what what are some ways to start climbing out of it? Or maybe what are some signs that you're actually in it, that you're actually in the narcissist vortex?
Okay, the easiest sign to well, I wouldn't say easiest because you become really resistant to abuse because you teach yourself to be quiet over a period of time and forget your own needs, and you give up your own yourself. So one of the ways that you can see is if you are feeling constantly not just confused, like completely discombobulated, like spun around 1,000 times and left to walk on a rope or something like that. You just simply cannot live your life. You're waking up scared, going to sleep scared, you're walking on eggshells, you're second guessing everything. There's so much self doubt, chronic self doubt, possibly signs of PTSD, depression, CPTSD, post traumatic disorder, people's pleasing, and you have literally given up yourself. I'll tell you one story. This might make sense. Now, one day, like when I was still in this whole situation, I I was at the time on antidepressants because I could barely get out of the shower. I was that tired. I was that exhausted from the whole trauma. And I didn't know that's why. I thought I was working hard. I'm a mom and da da da. Anyway, I got out of the shower and I started humming a song. Maybe antidepressant has kicked in a little bit. I started humming a song. My whole body started trembling with fear, right? And I didn't know what it was, but music has been my life. I don't ever shut up. Like I sing when I cook, I sing when I work, I sing when I drive. It's my life. If anybody knew me from my childhood, they all knew me for my songs and my creative writing. Two things, my soul, who I was gifted to be, that had gone, and I hadn't realized that for 10, 15 years, that had gone. So I was no longer there. I was no longer there. I was functioning. This turned out to be one of my curses actually, because whenever I go to the doctor or somebody, they make an assessment, they look at me, they make notes. Yeah, eye contact, this is good, well articulated. But I had a very high tolerance for abuse from very young age. And through that abuse, I had also taught myself to give myself an academic life and career. That was my coping mechanism. So I have always been very well articulated and I can talk, I can put things across. I was missed because of that. And I had a way of sort of undermining my own trauma, minimizing my own life. So that's so if you're really minimizing yourself, trying to tell yourself a story. One day it will get better. If I do this, it will get better. If I try this, it will get better. But you're stuck in a cycle of same conversation. It's not moving, but you're constantly feeling like you're not enough. And in the process, you've given up who you are. You know, that's a clear sign. You're with you're with somebody potentially with narcissistic traits or narcissistic personality disorder. But like I said, the word has now sort of lost its original references. The original reference was to refer to abuse survivors who have been abused by people with narcissistic personality disorder. Now it's actually been used quite liberally to refer to people with narcissistic traits, personality traits. How they manifest are very different.
It almost seems like everybody has capability for narcissistic traits.
No, we
No?
have no. We have I think there is let me just okay. So there are three different things that we need to be aware of in this whole journey, right? I think I talked to you about two things. I talked to you about NPD, which is the narcissistic personality disorder, and I talked to you about narcissistic personality traits. There's another thing, and that is just an asshole.
Hmm.
And that's
Okay.
just, that's just being an asshole, all right? Sorry about that. Just being an asshole. So, they are narcissistic styles. That's the word I was looking for. I'd completely forgotten that word in the conversation, but they're
Style?
narcissistic style. And they're just assholes, everyday assholes.
Okay,
We
so
might
everybody
fall.
could be an asshole.
Yeah, could be an asshole, just a narcissistic style, a bit rage, a little bit anger, a little bit, like entitlement and annoying behavior. When we are very dysregulated and we're out of character, we might have behaved like that in the past, or we might still behave like that. That doesn't mean that we are narcissistic. I think that's the other myth that's circulating around, is that we all have narcissistic traits. We might have been a asshole or somebody with a narcissistic style at certain times, but we showed empathy, we showed remorse, we showed sort of we might have approached those people and apologized. We've been careful with our behavior. There has been an insight, there has been a change of behavior, so there has been a process with that, right? So that doesn't count as narcissism. Narcissistic personality trait could be somebody with Machiavellianism, psychopathy, sadistic, antisocial, and high conflict, and conflict prone. It could be that narcissistic trait. They are, by definition, abusive personality types.
So it's the lack of empathy that really defines them.
Cognitive, yeah. So they have cognitive empathy, which means they're socially perceptive. So they can look at you and go, oh, you tell me a sad story, like, so a narcissistic person or somebody with narcissistic personality trait might look at you, oh, I'm so sorry, Jeff. Like if I was a psychopath, I'd go, how I'm gonna sleep with Jeff. Jeff's vulnerable. I'm gonna sleep with you. I'm gonna take your money. Or I'm just gonna get you to do something for me because you're vulnerable. Because now I can see your vulnerability and I can exploit it. Right? A narcissistic person may be like, oh, I'm so sorry. What's for dinner? you know it's like they're not necessarily gonna exploit it intentionally because they haven't got the capacity for it, but they're also socially perceptive. So there is no comforting, there is no they just don't have the capacity for that level of intimacy, and it scares them, it's overwhelming them. So one way to manage that overwhelm is to make you feel this little. So that's where the cruelty comes from. So it's a bit like, I'm somebody with NPD. You may come to me. It's like da da da. You're vulnerable. I'm like, yeah. So what do you want me to do about it? Yeah, I'm sorry, but what do you want me to do about it? You see?
Yeah. So I think that leads nicely into the next question. How do narcissists use children as weapons?
Ugh, yeah. Any possible way. That's my answer. So so Yeah, so there are so many different ways that mainly they use as children as a pawn to get back at you, punish you. But I'll give you some other traits so you can see if these patterns are present in your life. So they treat you like it is mandatory that you parent, but it is a choice for them. They break childcare arrangements. They don't want to show up at all when it's their turn to pick children up so they can mess things, and they trash talks to you to children, and then your children feel like it is their duty to protect the narcissistic parent because of the guilt tripping, and then puts you down when things go wrong in your children's lives, so everything is your fault. There's no accountability, there's no sort of coming together, and they prefer their convenience over parental responsibilities. Parenting is a big responsibility, by the way, and they won't show up for the parental responsibilities, but they will show up for the credits. Manipulate children a lot, and they
Well, I imagine
isolate.
showing up happens in a number of ways, not just physically. I imagine showing up like emotionally and, um, being available when they need it.
Oh yeah, that there's no emotional that so narcissistic parent, when child needs the emotional emotional sort of attention, they're gonna they're gonna feel really burdened by that. So the way they will deal with it, it depends on what mood they're in. They're likely to make children bad for having emotions, or dismiss children's emotions and feelings, or they distract children from experiencing it, or they might actually blame the children for having experiencing these emotions. Or sometimes they take the stage in the sense that a narcissistic mother may say things like, "Oh, I can't believe it. You just made me sad. Now you're sad. Now I am sad because you made me sad." So they will take the stage. So children will parentify the parent. The roles will be reversed in these situations. So there is no children of narcissistic parents are emotional orphans. There never has been emotional support for children with narcissistic parents. They're emotional orphans. The children grow up actually no guidance, nowhere to turn to, mm, no soft place to land, just completely alienated and isolated.
That
So,
almost sounds like the exact ingredients you need to make a narcissist. So
yes,
narcissists beget narcissists.
yes, I'll come to that because it's an important part, but I want to just take you through a
Okay.
couple of more patterns. So, manipulate children, isolate children from their support system to get their loyalty. Fight for custody, but don't engage in parenting. They rely on nannies, family, or devices to do the parenting. They will fight, you know, um, for the 50% custody, but they just actually don't want to do the parenting. And they engage in legal and financial abuse by constantly taking you to court, motion after motion after motion after motion. And then you'll end up paying for these lawyers. And in some cases, children are so vulnerable and so not safe. Um, they can be sexually or physically abused as well. So those are things. So coming back to your question about, will a narcissistic parent can create a narcissistic child? Yes, because it's traumatic for the child. It's traumatic for the child, and it's so vital that the solid parents or the protective parent is protected by the legal system, by the medical system, by all the other systems. But that's a very different conversation. That's a whole different podcast interview, I think.
I
Because
think so. I think that's
that
a
whole thing has collapsed big time.
and I don't want to get into that too much, but when I was experiencing that, I was like, I was pointing out the narcissistic traits, or from what I saw anyway, with my ex, and like going through the court system, and the court was like, doesn't matter, you're
Yeah.
at fault.
Yeah.
Like nobody cared. And it was shocking.
No. And for anybody who is listening to this, and if you're a professional, and if you're a lawyer, if you're a judge, if you're a magistrate, anybody, and I really hope this voice gets out there, the age of a narcissistic person is 2 to 9. It's stuck. Emotional age is stuck between 2 and 9. Would you give legal responsibility of raising a child to another child? And that's the question you need to be asking. It's not about the legal right. It's about what's best for children. And that's often disregarded and completely forgotten, what's best for children. You know, you would not ask a toddler to look after a toddler or a grown up child. It's impossible that they cannot do it. I mean, what do we say? We've given a whole country to a toddler. But hey ho.
One would argue most leaders are.
65% of is across the world is the number. I heard last time 65%.
Okay, so you've gone through the process, or you're going through the process. Maybe you're not winning all that much, and I use winning here loosely. What tips do you have to stay strong while your ex is kind of, distorting reality and turning your kids against you, or you're watching that narcissistic abuse happen to your kids? What tips do you have?
Okay. I have tips at different levels, right? To speak to different levels. One is protecting your child. We all have an instinct to protect our child, right? But we also need to make it a value, because we won't do anything, we won't make any important decisions unless it is in our value system. So question that a little bit. If it's not already there, put it in there. It has to be one of your core values, that you live a better life for your children, because you're the solid parent, you're the only responsible parent. So you need to wake up every day knowing that you're going to protect your children, right? So I say this because we also need to look at, you know, our own healing, our own parenting. If it's not a value of ours, we're reluctant to question those. Because one of the things is you need to make sure your side is clean in this. In the sense that if you're an aggressive parent, if you're lashing out at children, you're destroying your own relationship with your children. You really don't have a solid foundation to stand on it. You're the solid parent, so you need to make sure that your side is clean. I know it's incredibly hard because you're probably going through your own trauma, but wake up for your children, right? Every morning. We've talked about this before. Why did we wake up when we didn't want to? Because we had to feed our children, we had to take our children to school. That's why we woke up. You and I, we've both been there, right?
Hmm?
So do that. So there are several things you can do. So put that in your value system, right? Wake up. That's my value. But until then, until there are some healing work, I suggest bring your children closer to you, not manipulatively, genuinely. Build that connection deeper and go deeper with the relationship, and show them what a healthy relationship is like. Let them experience emotional empathy, deep level emotional empathy, a connection where they feel so safe that they grow up knowing, doesn't matter what happens in the world, I have this parent to come to, right? You've talked about your own life examples of, when your son came to you and talked about certain things in life. Be that person. Be that person, right? Okay, so that's a deeper level thing. So that means your deeper connection. In order to do that, you need to heal. You need to do your own trauma work somatically and to heal. Because if you have actually been with somebody with NPD, your soul is dead. They've killed your soul. You're resurrecting yourself from dead. There you are not there. You're not there. So who you are parenting, right? So your parenting style, How you parent is how the narcissist made you believe you as a parent. I want you to really understand this one. This is not you parenting. This is the version that the narcissist made you believe. That's why you need to break that. In order to break that, you need to get into therapy or coaching. Trauma-informed somatic, so crucial. Counseling won't cut it. I'll tell you what, I'll save you time. I have respect for counseling. Every modality has its own place. But if you wanna do some deep healing work, you need to get mind, body, spirit approach, right? So that's that. And then the other approach is to ensure you have a very strong parenting strategy, parallel parenting strategy. Ditch the hope that you will co-parent. You adapt parallel parenting. It has its own nuances, by the way. It has to make it work for your situation and the type of person you're dealing with. You need to get a parallel parenting strategy. In terms of children and supporting children, you empathize, you listen. Global listening, which means you're listening to understand them, not listening to fix them, not listening to rescue them, not listening to advise them, not listening to correct them, right? Listening to understand them. Right. Whatever you do, do not trash talk the narcissistic co-parent to your children, although you just so want to go, they're like that, they're like that. Do not do that. It's so damaging, conflicting truths, because children want both of their parents to love them. They love both the parents equally. They don't want to be trapped in between. As much as your truth is yours. That's not the truth that children see. They are also being fed a lie as a truth, so they will see that as a truth. So don't conflict your children and traumatize your children. So listen to them. Now, what would you do when they come to you and talk about things that concerns you about their safeguarding, right? Record, listen, of course, listen, empathize, validate, make sure they're comforted and protected, record, if necessary, report to the police, right? If necessary, report to the police, report to the school, get the support that your children need. So you will have to, unfortunately, because our support system is so rubbish and collapsed, you will have to determine to become your children's entire village. You don't have a choice. It's hard work. I'll tell you, it's really hard work, and I've done it. I'm still doing it. It's really tiring, and it prevents you from going for a lot of dreams. But and yeah, actually, setting goals for your own life is not very helpful at the beginning stages of recovery anyway, because again, your dreams and goals are not yours. The narcissistic person has turned you into completely somebody who is different, who will serve them. So your dreams and goals will actually be their shared fantasy, coming from their shared fantasy. So don't go too fast into going for the goals and the dreams. You need to recover and find who you are, regain agency, regain authenticity, and that's the place that you will actually start dreaming. Just you're in minus 50, bring yourself to ground zero, and then work from there.
Find that connection to yourself first.
Absolutely.
What's the biggest mistake? And so I work with fathers more, so this question's more geared towards that. What's the biggest mistake you're seeing fathers or people make in that situation?
Become the mama bear or father bear.
That's the mistake?
Yeah, I'll tell you why. Because when we are the mother bear or the father bear, we are acting from our emotions.
Hmm.
And you will be seen as the problem in the court system, amongst the family, by the teachers, by your friends, by your own children. Right? Been there, done it. That's why I'm saying, that's why you need to get strategic about it.
I suspect that was me as well. And what I find shocking is that these so-called professionals yes, they're seeing one level, they're seeing your emotions, but they're not looking at what's going on below that. All they're looking at is one level. Like, why is this person acting in this way?
They're not trained.
Hmm.
They're not trained. They don't know the landscape of narcissism. They're looking for evidence. They need black and white evidence on paper, on a video, on something to make decisions. And they're also not protected by their own legal systems, their own policies and procedures in the organizations that they work for. I don't want to go and trash them straight away because they're also in precarious situations with their own jobs, under pressure, overworked, overstretched, jaded, jaded. Um, so it, rather than going in like blaming them and losing the relationship with them, try and get them on your side by being strategic. I'm not saying manipulative, I'm saying being strategic, being grounded and being composed and being clever and smart about it. Get that trust on your side, get them to see you for who you are. If you want you to be seen, your situation to be assessed properly. I'm not guaranteeing that will give you the results that you want, but that puts you in a stronger position to leverage whatever you know. And a lot of people don't understand the landscape of narcissism. It's just like, oh well, it's just two parents. Let them sort it out. I mean, wouldn't they come together for their own child's sake? I mean, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? They shouldn't. We're not getting involved. If you think about a school, they don't have the legal capacity to handle a situation like this, as complicated as this. None of them have the trainings. Same with the, I would say even with the Kafkas. They're not trauma informed. They don't tune into somebody who is acting from a fight response or a flight response. They're not trauma informed. They don't understand. So there's a lot of loopholes. There are also a lot of things that will not be fixed in the next 20, 30 years. um we might be taking tiny steps to it. So as painfully as it sounds, you need to just then find that strategy for yourself so you can present yourself composed, organized, smart, and actually prove and give evidence, provide evidence through your behavior as well as your paperwork that you're the solid parent. I'll tell you one thing: narcissistic people are really good at making you believe that you're a piece of shit, because
Uh-huh.
they are. And they're very good at making you believe it, but you have got the power. Without your reaction for them to mirror, right? Your reaction is their ammunition. Cut it out. Don't give a reaction, right? What happens is they're starved of that supply and they don't know what to do in that situation. So you have got the power. Really, really put that into your head. People are so scared because of they've been punished, they've been silenced, and they've been, abused in every possible way. Their right to exist has been like completely breached and abused in every possible way. So we're scared. But you have got the power. They haven't. They haven't got a center. Get that into your head.
The that process of going from, I forget the word you used at the beginning of this, almost like you're in that vortex, you're spinning all the time, to a place where you don't react. That, for me anyway, that was a long journey,
Yeah,
and I made a lot of mistakes along the way.
yeah, me too.
I think it's important to give yourself grace to make mistakes. You're not going to be perfect along that way. And then some of the time, that's even going to show up, and other people are going to see that. Um, And I imagine your kids are going to see that at some point, and there's going to be days where it just breaks you. There were days I couldn't get out of bed, and I had to get somebody else to take my kids to school. Um, and I imagine I almost imagine narcissism or NPD like it's a virus that just or an illness that infects everybody around it, everybody around narcissist that person with NPD. So you're you're almost taking on those traits, and everybody else around you sees that. How do you watch for the narcissistic signs in your kids, and how do you counter that?
Oh, children are narcissistic by nature. That's their developmental need. That's so between the age of 2 and 5 and 13, I think 13 and 19, that you will see a lot of traits that doesn't tell you that they are narcissistic, by the way. And there's no way of knowing until they've grown up and adults, and then it will show up. So the thing you can do is to really expose them into healthy relationships and healthy conversations and critical thinking, and giving them insights, and sort of have very strong boundaries with yourself and with your children, and respect their boundaries. So we can really cultivate all these healthy practices within us. That I don't think I haven't actually come across any research that would suggest that we will know early enough, because children are narcissistic by nature. So you will see patterns. I would say don't be alarmed. Just be the connected, healthy parent who is not overly permissive, who is not overly suppressive, but very authoritative and firm, and but connected and loving. Hold a container for them.
I guess I would be, well, I was on higher alert just knowing how my ex was.
Mm,
So I think that's where that question comes from, is just
yeah,
being overly concerned because I saw how she was, and
yeah.
then, she's around my kids.
Um, you only need one adult. Children only need one connected adult
Hmm.
to form secure attachment in their life. And this is again research, by the way. Um, and if they have that one adult to form a secure attachment, they're considered to be safe, and they will grow into healthy adults.
Okay, so I think we've gone into the deep end now.
Yes.
Let's start to come out of it. What's the hope? What's possible on the other side of this?
Immense growth if you give yourself a chance, right? So that's the simplest answer. And you will regain your authenticity. You will regain your agency and your personhood in the process of healing, and sort of in the process of healing. It will take some time, so allow yourself some time. And like we've discussed before, you're not just dealing with one cohesive person, you're dealing with an entire cohesive system to protect your children. So you are likely to be re-traumatized in this process. So, but even then, I mean, I have a very strong history of trauma. I'll tell you a little bit of my trauma to give you hope, because I think, as much as I don't want to tell you I give you hope and I am your hope, I don't want to come into that grandiose space, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about my life, and I really hope you can get some hope from that story. Like I said, malignant, I've experienced every possible trauma in my life: sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional neglect, being neglected by parents, no space to land, whether it was an achievement, whether it was a trauma, like I've experienced sexual abuse at the age of 7. I went home and it was by somebody who worked with us, and that person was around all the time. I was unsafe all the time, but I didn't have a parent to talk to about it. 20 years later, I confront my mother about it. Her reaction was, "Why didn't you tell me?" You know, so that re-trauma. So I've gone through such deep level of trauma. I grew up in Sri Lanka. There was a war, there was a riot. So I've seen things, heard things that a child shouldn't. Every single Sri Lankan has in my generation. And then at one point, I was suicidal. I had lost all my cognitive functions, which meant I couldn't string a sentence together. And I have like 3 university degrees. I've always been very academically sound. Um, and I couldn't string a sentence together. And I have bounced back from that to do this work, feeling very connected, back in the body, feeling, I don't know, I feel like I have abundance everywhere and love everywhere. I have amazing people who are supporting me. My relationship with my child is the the most precious gift that I have had in this journey. Like, it's a beautiful relationship. We had such a wonderful, happy time. I love being a mom. I love being her mom. I love being her mom. And I hope she loves being my daughter. And I believe she says that to me. And sometimes she says that in different ways. We have such fun. Bring fun and joy back into your life. Here's the thing, my belief, and I've always said this to myself: I'm not the one who committed a crime. I will not the one to be punished. And I had that phrase in my head. Whatever the bad day it was, I was like, nope, I will not be punished for this. I've had very R-rated conversations with the universe in those moments, like, what why me? I'm pretty sure you're doing that too. This is not a phrase of, if I can come back from this, you can come too, because I think that's a very unfair statement to make, because you know people are living in different stages, different cultures, different environments, different economical backgrounds. And again, by the way, I had no money to pay for therapists either, so if you ask me how I did this, I'll tell you on a more one-to-one level. But I've manifested it, I've sought it, I've asked for it, I stayed focused on it. And you have no idea how many strangers who have helped me out, how many people who offered me free sessions, how many people who offered me. I'm actually crying with gratitude, because I have such gratitude in this journey. So you can do that too.
And I imagine I imagine it's the grit that gets you through it.
I believe so. I
Yeah.
really, really believe so. I'm actually crying with gratitude, because my heart is so full of gratitude and love these days when I think about, oh my God, that journey, how I'm here. It's the first time I'm crying on a podcast, by the way. Oh, and but it's like, yeah, you did not commit the crime, nor did your children. They will not be punished, and you shouldn't punish yourself either. Whether it's spiritually you think you deserve to be punished, no spiritual entity out there, or no religious leader who teaches love, will entrust punishment on you for being a human. It's just spiritual bypassing. So just don't allow that kind of beliefs into you. Just rise up, because you will.
I think people can see the determination and grace and um, gratitude that it took to get through this.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely beautiful. Um, what's one thing you would say? What's the one most important mindset shift, or maybe not mindset, but soul set? Maybe that's a better word that somebody needs to make in order to heal from this.
You got to put yourself first. Like, you really have to put yourself first. It's a big ask for trauma survivors, by the way, because you've never been there. You've never been seen, you've never been heard, and you've always been crushed, you know, under heavy foot of someone else, always. It's a big ask from yourself, but do ask that from yourself because you deserve it. You need to put yourself first, not in a very woke, new, trendy, put yourself first way. you know, put yourself first way and like, burn some sage and, put on a yoga pants and go to gym kind of walk Hollywoody way. That's not what I'm saying. Put yourself first because your children will see you putting yourself first and they will learn the value of putting themselves first. Because without that distinction, you showing up in their life, being happy, because children, their default is survival, by the way. It's how we have been wired. Children will tune into our environment. When the environment is bad, they will make that belief: I am wrong, I am bad, I've done something wrong, something's wrong with me. That's their default. So, if you want to change it, one of the questions I get often asked by people when they come to the signature workshop or working one on one with me is, how do I make my children happy? Right? Put yourself first. You need to change the environment by putting yourself first, choosing yourself, and actually and allow your children the safety, emotional safety, to discover who they are with that safety, knowing you're here. It's like a minefield, this whole co-parenting with abusive people. It's a minefield. Children are also walking on this minefield with you. But when they know, but there's a safe space, that's the island in the middle, the safe space, and my mom or my dad is waiting for me. Boy, I'll tell you, they'll walk. Say something went wrong, your relationship with your children is ruptured, and you lose them. Worst case scenario, right? And in their adult life, and let's hope that they get into therapy, they start looking back and then talk to therapists. And therapists are very good at getting you to reflect. And if they ever tune into the fact that you fought for them, they'll come back to you. 20 years later, 30 years later, they will still come back to you. So this fight is still worth fighting for.
I guess that patience is one of the most valuable tools you have.
Yeah. Yeah. Patience is, we are in a fast-paced industry. Everything is fast. Amazon is fast. Food is fast. Internet supposed to be fast always, but everything is fast. And people expect manifestations and the relationships to be fast as well. Your relationship with your children is the one that you will invest most of your time, most of your energy, most of your money, as you will, into, right? And the manifestation and the results will also take longer to show up. But don't give up. It's not going to be fast. It's not going to be fast. It will come with your relationship with your children. And you've got all the tools human beings are incredible in terms of survival. And I've grown up in a war-torn country, and I've seen incredible survival from people. I consider myself to be a lucky one, compared to some other experiences people have experienced. And we survive a lot as human beings.
where can people find you if they want to learn more
You just
or work with
manifest me, I appear on your Google.
you? It just takes 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, I just manifest, like light the candle in the morning and incense, and like just, where's that woman, Nisanka? And I'll appear on your Google. Now you can find me on my website. Coaching with Nisanka. Coaching with Nisanka. Nisanka is Nisanka. Coaching with Nisanka. And you can reach out to me. A signature workshop is coming up on 19th of March. It's a free one. And there's a course coming up, parallel parenting strategy course, starting on the 26th of March. And yeah, so that's where you can find me. I'm also on Instagram, co-parenting with the Narcissist Coach. On Facebook, if you search my name, it'll come up. And I'm also on LinkedIn as well. I like LinkedIn.
You're everywhere.
I am everywhere. I told you, manifest me. I'll come up on your screen.
Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom, your journey, your gratitude. Um, and I know this is a very difficult subject, and I think you've handled it with grace.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. As always, Jeff, I love talking to you and love working with you. So thank you for having me and thank you for listening.
Fun.